Welcome back to Success with Steven. My name is Steven Smith. On this channel, we discuss all things financial literacy. A U.S. bank is the country's fifth largest bank by asset. And if you've been trying to get approved for a U.S. bank credit card and keep hitting roadblocks, then trust me, you're not alone. U.S. Bank is notorious for having strict underwriting guidelines, especially compared to some other issuers. But here's the thing. Getting approved for a U.S. bank card is very achievable. You just need to understand what they're looking for. And today we're going to break it all down step by step. So in this video, we'll be going over what makes U.S. Bank different, how to position your credit profile for approvals, and common mistakes that lead to rejections, and which cards are the best starting point. So whether you're trying to get the U.S. Bank Cash Plus Visa or the Altitude Go, or even one of their premium cards, stick around because we're going to cover it all. I'm going to give you the approval secrets and set you up for success. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. Let's talk about why U.S. Bank has a reputation for being one of the more difficult issuers when it comes to credit approvals. Unlike Chase, which uses a strict but widely understood rule, the 524 rule, U.S. Bank doesn't have a clearly defined rule, but from personal experience, reports, and approvals from subscribers on this channel, I have a few consistent patterns that I've noticed emerge with U.S. Bank. Number one, U.S. Bank is very conservative. Another one of our subscribers described this as thinking of U.S. Bank as a jealous girlfriend or like a jealous boyfriend. They don't like to see a bunch of new accounts, any recent hard inquiries, or aggressive credit seeking behavior. So if you've opened up, let's say, a new account in the last 12 months, your odds of approval will drop significantly. It's not just accounts though, it's hard inquiries, and we'll talk about that a little later. U.S. Bank also tends to favor applicants that have relationships with them. So if you have a checking or savings account, U.S. Bank is more likely to approve you, and it does tip the scales towards your favor. In my own personal experience, I could not get approved for any U.S. Bank products until I opened a business banking checking account and savings with them. After that, I was able to get a credit card, business line of credit, and also an SBA-backed business loan. However, there are always exceptions to every rule. I have seen some people with no relationship whatsoever get approvals with decent credit limits like $10,000, but these individuals had FICO scores that were in the 800 range and very long, extensive credit history. U.S. Bank also uses a mix of internal scoring and external data, meaning your FICO score alone won't guarantee anything. You could have a 780 credit score and still get denied if they don't like your credit profile's recent activity, but a lot of the approvals are automatic. It's a lot of systematic approvals done. And we'll also talk about that too, because there's a way that even if you're denied, you can still get approved with U.S. Bank. Now, from what we've learned so far, we know that U.S. Bank is a relationship bank. The first thing I recommend is opening up a checking and savings account with them before applying for a credit card. Next, if you have any new credit accounts or hard inquiries, like let's say one hard inquiry in the last 6 months, I suggest that you wait until they become at least 6 months old before applying for any credit products with them. Or you can also watch my video on removing hard inquiries if you would like to remove those from your credit report. Doing that will greatly increase your chances of approval. I also recommend not having a new account open within the last 12 months. Of course, this isn't a guarantee. And like I said, there's always exceptions to every rule, but this has been very consistent in my experience. Okay, new accounts, you want to make sure you haven't gotten one with at least 6 months to 12 months. Hard inquiries, at least 6 months to 12 months, but you can also remove those. Let's talk about the checking account and savings accounts that I recommend that you open with U.S. Bank. Now, U.S. Bank does not have a free checking account per se. Both the Bank Smartly Checking and the U.S. Bank Safe Debit account do have a monthly service fee. However, unlike the Bank Safe Debit account, the U.S. Bank Smartly Checking offers several ways to waive your monthly service fee in many situations. There's no monthly service fee if you are a member of the military, if you are 24 years or younger, if you are 65 years or older. If you aren't part of any of these groups, then you can also do the following to avoid the fee each month. You can make a combined direct deposit totaling $1,000 or more, or you can also maintain an average account balance of $1,500 or more. Or if you own an eligible US bank credit card, then that will also waive the fee. So if I had to choose one, I would say that the Bank Smartly Checking is the best one overall, in my opinion. You should start by opening this account to build your relationship with US Bank. As for your savings account, I recommend the Bank Smartly Savings. Now, this account does have a great APY depending on how much money that you deposit, but you'll want to check the website. The information is going to change for the most part, so you always want to check what the rates are. It's no point in me even trying to actually give it to you. But the $5 monthly maintenance fee is waived if you have the Bank Smartly Checking account or the Safe Debit account, or if you have the Bank Smartly Visa Signature Card, or for accounts with a minor under the age of 18. So essentially, you'll be able to open both of these accounts with no monthly fee if you could somehow meet the aforementioned criteria, which should be easy for everyone. I also recommend that you start with at least $300 in the Smartly Checking and the Smartly Savings account. I've seen US Bank customers who did not have a checking or savings account apply for a personal credit card, and they were approved for a $500 limit. And this was with an 800 credit score. Whereas someone with US Bank who's been a customer that has a savings and a checking account leaves $300 at least in the checking and savings, get approved for a $5,500 credit limit with a FICO score around the 700 range. Now, once again, this does not apply to everyone. I'm sure that it's going to be someone in the comments who has an 800 score and got approved for 15,000 or something of that nature. But again, I'm talking about the general consensus, what you see commonly, and not everyone has an 800 credit score with 10 years of credit history where, you're such a minority. Your situation isn't the norm. And, that's why we want to put out these other data points for the people who don't have that extensive history or that high of a credit score. Now, if this does sound like you, where you were someone with the 800 credit score and you were approved for a card with, let's say, $500 for the limit, trust me, that happens a lot. I recommend that you call the US Bank Recon Line. If you have a high FICO score and you're ever approved for a low limit, you can ask them to manually review, and they might be able to raise your credit limit, but be aware they normally perform a second hard pull when they do that. While the minimum required score varies by card, most of the US Bank credit card lineups, like the US Bank Cash Plus Visa Signature Card, requires good to excellent credit. The lowest score that I've seen for approvals on most of these cards is 690. Now, if you've gotten approved with a lower credit score, then please drop that in the comments below. The more data points, the better. I'm just saying from, again, the consensus standpoint, from what I've seen, 690 seems to be the minimum. However, the average that I'm seeing is around 720 or above that gets approved, at least without having to call the Recon Line. And that's just about, the average credit score. So let's talk about a few of these cards. Let's start with the US Bank Secured Visa Card. For this one, if you have a 580, so credit being in the bad range, you can still get approved for this card, I would say with very little derogatory marks. If you have a low credit score and, if you have too many charge-offs and negative items, you could still be denied. But if you just have a low credit score and there's not a lot of negative accounts on your credit profile, you should still be able to get that secured card. Now, there's the US Bank Altitude Go Visa Secured Card. With this one, I've seen the 640 or fair credit range get approved for this card. Again, if you have a lower credit score, but maybe you don't have any derogatory marks, or you have a longer credit history with a low score, then you might still get approved for this. I'm not saying that you won't, but I think the 640 range for this secured card option is, a very good place to start. I just did a video on the best secured cards if you have bad credit. I recommend that you watch that video. I go into great detail about US Bank and how to get approved for those secured card options. Now, with the US Bank Cash Plus Visa secured card with a 580 credit score, I've seen that one. And again, that's why I'm saying like these things can range. It just seems to kind of vary. But I would say with a 580 credit score, once again, pretty clean credit profile, no derogatories like charge-offs and stuff like that. You should be okay. If you were denied, hey, it's okay. remove that hard inquiry, and you can always start with a different secured card and then work your way back up to this one. After 12 months, then you can look at graduating to the unsecured version of this US Bank card. Next, we have the US Bank Cash Plus Visa Signature Card. And again, because there's so much varying information, I would say you want to be anywhere between a 690 and 850. That's the good to excellent range for your credit. You also have the US Bank Shield Visa, which is a fairly new card. This card just came out recently, at least at the time of recording this video. So I'm just going to give it the exact same range, 690 to 850. You want to be in the good to excellent range for your credit score. There's also the US Bank Altitude Connect Visa Signature Card. Same thing, 690 to 850, good to excellent. There's the US Bank Smartly Visa Signature Card, 690 to 850, good to excellent. And the US Bank Shopper Cash Reward Visa Signature Card, 690 to 850. Again, not saying that you can't have a lower credit score. You might be able to get by with a 650. I don't know about below that. But again, if there are any individuals who have gotten approved with a lower credit score than 690, then hey, drop that in the comments below. It's just more data points. It's more things to look at. But again, we are looking at the consensus of data, what happens commonly. So remember, if you have like, let's say a 690 credit score, you're feeling really good right now. If you've applied for a bunch of credit cards in the last 6 months, that could be a red flag. I suggest that you wait unless you have a very extensive long credit history. I would say at least 4 to 5 years long. Now, if you don't and you still want to, try to apply, if you're denied, we're going to talk about that Recon Line. But US Bank generally doesn't like to see more than 2 inquiries in the last 6 months, more than like, let's say 2 to 4 new accounts in the last year. You always want to keep that in mind. But we also need to discuss your income and your existing obligations. And this is where, again, everybody has different credit profiles and they have a different level of income. US Bank considers your stated income and uses that to calculate your debt to income ratio. So if you have $200,000 worth of, let's say, debt that is not a mortgage, then they're going to take that into consideration if you put that your annual income is $50,000. It's going to be very hard for someone who has $200,000 worth of debt with a $50,000 salary to get, let's say, a large credit limit. But if your income is solid and your monthly obligations are low, that really does work in your favor. But if you already have high balances across your other cards and loans, they may see that as overextending yourself. So to help with this, I recommend getting your credit card utilization down to 10% or less before applying for a card. This will also increase your credit score, which, in turn will increase the likelihood that you will be approved. And then finally, existing credit lines. US Bank is cautious about granting large credit limits to applicants who don't already have experience managing other large limits elsewhere. So if your highest credit card is like, let's say $1,000, I would not expect US Bank to give you $10,000 right out the gate. Again, exceptions to every rule, but we're speaking generally. Now, here is a little trick that I've learned, at least it seems to work sometimes. So let's say that you do get approved for a US Bank credit card, but you only got approved for $1,000. You want to call the Recon Line when you get approved for the $1,000 limit. You want to tell them, hey, like let's say you have the Altitude card and you're doing something where you were trying to hit a spin bonus for travel. You can let them know a good reason why you need that additional credit limit. Like, hey, I was going to use this to actually spend X amount of dollars while I'm traveling abroad or taking this trip. That's the reason why I opened this card. Can you please increase my limit so that I can do this? Once again, it might be a hard pull, but if you can give them a good reason why you're doing it, they might be able to give you that credit limit increase. Doesn't work every time, but I have seen it work a good amount of time where I think that's a pretty good tip. Now let's talk about the Recon Line for a second, because this is very important with US Bank. Many decisions for US Bank are automated. If you receive something like a 7 to 10 day notice and you call the number, which I'm going to provide that to you, but it's 1-800-947-1444. You can actually call that number to check the status of your application. It's very common for a lot of people to get that 7 to 10 day notice. Whenever you get that notice, you can call and speak to somebody from underwriting. If you call like the very next day, they might say something like, oh, wait till this date or this date. We should have your application, approved by then. You can call within like a few days. And if you like 2 or 3 days, if you call and it says that you're denied, then call the number again, hit 0. It'll take you to someone from underwriting. Let them know that you were denied, and then let them know that you would like to have someone manually review your application again. And you want to know anything that they have, like let's say they're like, oh, I had this X amount of inquiries. Let's say you were looking for a home and you're like, oh, but those inquiries for when I was trying to get my mortgage. That's something I've seen where they made an exception and then a person has gotten approved. In fact, I've seen more approvals after someone's been denied with US Bank than any other lender I've ever seen. It's because, again, a lot of their stuff is automated. It happens, the system will say one thing, but as soon as you get someone to manually review it and whatever, let's say the reason for the denial was, as long as you can speak to it, very, very easy for you to get approved. I've also seen it where some people get identification issues where they can't verify your identity and they ask you to fax over your driver's license. That happens too. If any one of those things happen, that's normal. It's not weird. Fax your driver's license. You'll probably be approved. I also did a percentage for the credit pulls with US Bank, and the pulls were overwhelmingly geared towards TransUnion, but it can vary by state. Now, by percentage, 22 to 24.7% of all applicants pulled an Experian credit report, while 21 to 23.6% of all applicants pulled an Equifax credit report. So that is the least likely to be used. And then 46 to 51.7% of all applicants pulled a TransUnion credit report. So here's the thing. More than half of the time, more than likely, you will pull TransUnion. If that is your, let's say, your best credit score, I suggest putting a freeze on the other two to see if you can get a TransUnion pull. All right. It is overwhelmingly the most likely bureau to be pulled for you, no matter where you live. Now, to summarize everything that we discussed about US Bank, here are my recommendations for you to have an approval. If you are someone who has good to excellent credit, 800 or above, with a extensive amount of credit history, and for whatever reason you just don't want to open up a bank account with US Bank, then you can go ahead and just apply for a credit card without trying to build that relationship. I would say if your credit score is below 800, even if you're like 780 or below, I just suggest that you go ahead and you will just open up that checking and that savings and you deposit some money, because the thing is, if you do that, it greatly increases your chances of not only getting approved, but higher limits to start in the beginning, which is, what you would want. If you have a credit score that's 690 or below, and you still want to apply for one of their credit cards, not to say that you can't get approved, we're just talking statistically your odds. You definitely want to open up a checking, a savings. I recommend that you make sure that you have no hard inquiries in the last, let's say 6 months, no recent hard inquiries in the last 6 months. You don't have any new accounts with, at least 6 months since your last account was opened. And I highly suggest leaving some money in the account with US Bank, maybe even looking at opening up, let's say a certificate, a CD, some other products with them that don't really require the highest credit to be approved. I would suggest that, and then waiting 90 days. Now, do you have to do all of that? No, you don't. I'm not saying that you have to do any one particular thing. I'm just saying if I gave you, as much possible good information that I could to greatly increase your chances, then this would be it from my own personal experience with US Bank and from the experience that I've gotten with other subscribers on this channel. And hey, if you've gotten approved, especially by using that Recon Line tip, let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you were able to get approved for a low limit. You called the Recon Line and then they gave you a higher limit. I know this worked for me. I'm telling you guys, definitely always call, especially if you have a good established credit profile. You should definitely be getting approved. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. As always, I appreciate you. I very greatly appreciate you for watching this content. Please drop in the comments below which card you applied for. I know you guys are going to get these approvals. Let me know what your approvals were. Let me know what state that you were in, and let me know, some data points about your credit profile if you feel comfortable sharing those with the community. Let us know, if it was a TransUnion pool, what your credit score was, or your credit score range, your utilization, your average age. Share all those data points so that this comment section can be a resource for a lot of people who would like to apply for other US bank cards. Let us know if you had any experience with the Recon Line, and update us on what happens as the process unfolds. If you went through the process of getting the 7 to 10 day decision, and then a couple days later, go back, edit your comment, update how that went. Did you get a small limit? Were you able to get an increase? Did they hard pull? Things like that really do help. And again, sharing is just another way that you can benefit everyone else that watches this content as well. Once again, thank you guys so much, and you have a wonderful day.